Okay. All right. So sorry about the delays, guys. Let's see. Moriah is here, and Winston, you want to turn on your video? Winston was going to join us. There's Moriah.
Okay. Are we waiting on someone at this point?
Nope, go for it.
Okay, sorry for the delay, everybody. I just finished up some lessons and had to get my harp tuned, so a lot going on right now. But hopefully this will go smooth, and I hope you will enjoy composing for the harp. I know my husband has done a lot for me now, and I've enjoyed learning how to help composers write for the harp. So there are just a few things that we'll talk about that are important to remember when you're writing for the harp, and then I'll show you some more extended techniques and some fun things you can include, and I'll show you some clips of some harpists who are playing very idiomatic things for the harp, and I'll play one or two things, and then I'll let you ask questions. All right, let's jump right into talking about the resonance on a harp. There are some important things to note. Harp has kind of what we call 3 primary registers, and one of them is a low register, we have the high register, and we have the middle register. And as a general rule, the higher the note, the less resonance you're going to get, but the lower note, the less it carries. So the higher it is, it's going to cut through really well, but it doesn't resonate very long. The sound dies away very quickly. You play low and it's going to cut through, it won't cut through very much, but it'll resonate for a long time. So it rings for a really long time. So there's just a few things to remember with that. If you want something to carry for a long time, you're going to want to use the bass, but just know that it's not going to actually carry through very much at all. Especially if you're playing with an ensemble, you won't hear it very well. It might add a little bit of some good sound underneath, but don't expect it to be heard real well. So if you want something to cut through, you'll want to use some upper register. The middle register is a nice resonant area. But if you play with a lot of instruments, if you're going to be playing with several instruments, especially something that's in that similar register, kind of around middle C and an octave or 2 around that, it won't cut through quite as nicely as something in the higher register. But the higher register kind of has a more percussive sound, so just kind of depends on what you're wanting to hear the most. One quick thing about fingering on piano, you use all 5 fingers on both hands. Harp, we don't use our pinkies, so don't write any 5-note chords. That's the primary thing to think about with that. Other than that, you can pretty much write as you would for the piano. There are a couple of little things that I could mention, but I'll just let you write it, and if it comes up, I'll mention it, but usually it's not too much of a problem. So 4-note patterns, 4-note chords, that kind of thing. Don't expect 5 fingers to be in use. I think that's all in regards to the actual notes. I'm going to briefly touch on the pedals. I don't want to scare you with the pedals, so I'm not going to say a whole lot. I want you to try to branch out and try a lot of things, and usually we can make things work, but if you try to understand it, it'll probably scare you a little bit, so I don't want you to like freak out or anything. Just dive in, and if it doesn't work, I'll let you know and I'll tell you how to fix it, and chances are I can make it work, or we can find something that does. But I wasn't able to get this onto my computer before I started, so I'm just going to show you kind of a little diagram. So we have 7 pedals, and they are our accidentals. I just have a C scale on the harp, so our pedals are going to be your letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And they have 3 positions: sharp, flat, and natural. I'll show you real quick what they look like on the harp. So you can see them down here. We have an up position, a middle position, and a down position. And so every single string can have 3 positions. Unlike piano, the note you play is the note that you get. On the harp, the note a C can be a C sharp, a C natural, oh, sorry, wrong pedal, C sharp, C natural, or a C flat. So we can get three pitches on one string, which if you think about it, that means you can get a lot of enharmonics happening between the strings, and it's a lot of fun. And if you want to do stuff like that, just let me know and I'll help you with it. Otherwise, I'm not gonna talk too much about it. One thing to remember is that if you are doing a lot of chromaticism, high speed is not gonna work because every single accidental has to be placed with the pedal. So I can set my pedals into a key, let's say A major, but if you want me to be playing something like Flight of the Bumblebee, it's probably not gonna work because every single accidental has to be physically changed in my pedals. So you can do some chromaticism. In fact, you can do some really cool stuff with chromaticism, but just not at high tempos, or just 3-note patterns next to each other, that kind of thing, where it's just 1 or 2 notes changing rather than doing scales all over the place. So it's not that hard, it's just not high speed stuff with a lot of scales and stuff. So I think that's talking about most of the things on the harp that are good to keep in your mind. I'm not going into great detail. I'm gonna show you a quick video of a young gal playing a really flary piece on the harp. And I want you to listen for the resonance that you don't really get in the low register. It doesn't penetrate much at all, but the upper registers just come through almost piercingly, almost a little too much actually in this video. And I'll say more after we watch it, but I will show you here just a second. Okay. Okay. So some of the things you might notice with that is how well the upper register just cuts through. It's very piercing. If you want it to be, you can play it gently, of course, as you could tell. But the bass hardly cuts through at all. And this is her playing a solo. Now I will say she wasn't putting a lot of force into that lower register, but you can expect it not to cut through nearly as well as the upper register. Excuse me. Let me just do a little. Okay. I'm going to play just a little bit of a piece. This is Little Fountain. I played just a snippet earlier. Okay, that kind of gives you a good idea of what to, a few different things. How well the middle section cuts through in the upper register, but also that downward arpeggio pattern. Arpeggios in general work really well on the harp, but especially the downward. If you really want to get, you could say the harp sound that people are used to hearing, that downward pattern is very, very harp-like, you might say. It's a great sound. It's very full. Obviously, there are many, many other things, but that's one of the things that I would say cuts through the best. And you can get some really neat things too in that, some really cool chords. The ones in that piece were very traditional, but as you can imagine, you can do a lot of nice things with that. Let's see. I'm going to demonstrate a few of the extended techniques. One of the most familiar things that you're going to hear in every harp part all over the world is glissandos. It's our standard. Okay, that was just a C scale, basically. But the cool thing about glissandos is you can do a lot with your pedals to make it sound more interesting. Just to make it, I'm going to give myself a B sharp and an E sharp. So I'm taking out my B and E, creating enharmonic tones. So I have two notes that are C's and two notes that are basically F's. And it makes a completely different sound. Okay, you can tell it kind of has more of the love song tune that we hear. It has kind of that more romantic kind of sound. You can create some really weird things. I could just do stuff that's completely random, and it gets a completely different sound. So you can explore that and see if you can come up with some cool glissandos for your pieces. Another great sound that we get on the harp is harmonics. A little different than what you hear on some other instruments. They sound a little bit more like bells. I can do up to 3 at a time, but 2 of those would have to be in the left hand and no more than about a third apart. So I can do chords and that kind of thing, which can sound really, really, really cool. Very pretty sounding. Actually a really good way to help with resonance in the bass, if you're wanting to get a little bit more bass, is to have me play what's called PDLT. I like to think of it as press the table. So I'm playing next to the soundboard. Tip this down a little bit so you can see it, and it gives a better sound in the lower register. It cuts through a little better, especially if you want that lower register to cut through. If you want to use more of that, playing down low, it sounds a little bit more like a guitar sound, so it's not your typical harp sound, but does have a great, it cuts through much better. I think that's most of what I have. Let me see if Seth has any suggestions. Does anybody have questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm writing a piece for harp, but I have it written for piano right now.
Okay.
Do you think I could send you the PDF of it and you could give me some tips on how I can make it to play for harp?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to do that. Go ahead.
Could I have your contact information?
Yeah, my email is moriah.custer, and that's moriah.custer@gmail.com.
Thank you.
Yep. Do you have any specific questions right now?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Anybody else have some questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Jonas.
Do you have any suggestions for accompanying like having harp as accompaniment for a solo instrument?
Do you know what solo instrument?
Flute.
Okay, great. So my sister's a flute player. We grew up playing together. The nice thing about that is that the timbres are completely different. It's a little different than if I was playing with violin. So they're gonna match up really well. The other thing is that so often their upper register cuts through really well. So there's not a whole lot to hold back. If you're doing really low flute, you probably aren't gonna want the harp to play out too loud. Because it will cover easily. I'm trying to think of a really good. Honestly, there's not a whole lot to give you tips on with the flute because it does tend to, they sound so different and the timbre cuts through so well unless they're in their low register. So yeah, I think that's going to be great.
Okay.
All right, Jay, did you have a question?
Small that the harp can actually play like Flight of the Bumblebee.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
At a very slow tempo. It wouldn't be worth listening to.
Okay.
Any other questions? Not right at the moment. Nathan, did I see you? Were you going for a question? Oh, Jonas? Oh, okay. All right, just a minute. I have one other piece I want to play for you just as a little bit less of an extended technique. It's somewhat more of a standard harp sound. But it's one of those pieces that people really like it. I think mainly because it's simple, but it's beautiful and it cuts through really well. It also has some really nice glissando effects and harmonics, and some playing next to the soundboard. So give me just a second here. So that was just, it's a very simple piece for the most part, but it just demonstrates some of the beauty that you can get with some very easy things. Putting a melody line underneath the glissandos, or you could even switch that and do higher melody. It works a little better with the glissandos on top. Chords in your right hand with a nice arpeggiation underneath. Just a lot you can achieve with that. Any other questions?
Yeah. Have you ever collaborated with a brass instrument?
I've done a little bit with French horn, which is obviously a more mellow instrument. It does work pretty well. I played once with a trombone, but it was not a very good situation. The trombonist wasn't very good. So it didn't go very well, but I think it is you can do that. I've played with bassoon, which I know that's, it's not brass, but kind of has a timbre that's a little harsher sometimes. And that was really beautiful. So I would love to try some stuff with brass and see how it goes. I haven't had an opportunity to do a lot with that, but I think it could be really nice.
Cool.
Yeah. You would have to be very careful about overpowering the harp, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, I think that's all then. If nobody has any more questions, if you didn't hear me give my email to Landon, it's moriah.custer, that's moriah.custer@gmail.com. And feel free to send me a little PDF or an example of something you're working on. If you have a question, I'd be happy to help you out. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have. This sounds very exciting. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys later.
Hey guys, so I guess we're just hanging out for a few minutes until the next session. I can't hear you,
Stop the
Sarah.
recording. You can't? How about now?
Okay.
Were you able to hear me now? Good.
So next we're doing piano and cello, right?
Yes.
And I'm trying to remember who is supposed to be the host for that session.
I think I am.
Okay.
And Randall is back.
So how do I hand off the hosting?
Go over to the participants. And if you don't have the participants up, you can look at the bottom of the screen. There's a button that says participants. And it looks like you didn't turn off the recording, or maybe you just paused it. I don't know. It says it's still recording.
Still recording. Hi.
Hi, Randall.
So I need to stop the recording, right?
Yes, stop the